You are listening to the Examine Life with Bram Levinson. So, as many of you know, this past September I gave the annual yoga and meditation vacation in Greece, as I do every September. But what many of you don't know is that earlier this year, at the beginning of this year, and actually late last year, I was considering not going back to Greece this year. I was considering going somewhere else. And there was a whole mental debate going on in my mind about whether or not I should skip a year going to Greece, but I had felt like maybe a change would be good. When I had started giving these trips, I had said I was not going to go back to the same place more than once. And then I found Paros. I found the island of Paros and fell in love and just thought, you know what, I can't not bring people over here. So it turned into an annual thing. And late last year, after I had come back from the 2018 trip, I was considering going somewhere else and not doing Greece for 2019 and then maybe coming back to Greece in 2020. And I remember I couldn't make the decision. There's so much overthinking going on. And I remember I had people saying to me, it's good to change it up. I had people telling me that it was a good idea to keep going back to the same place over and over because then, it sort of got indelibly marked in people's minds that was where Bram goes. Those are where, that's where the trips are that Bram gives, or some of them anyway. And of course, like anything, if you ask for an opinion, you're going to hear, all kinds of conflicting opinions because there are justifications for every single argument out there. I mean, when you look at, what kind of food should I eat? It's like, are fats good? Yeah, you'll find articles telling you that fats are good. Are fats bad? You're going to find articles telling you that fats are bad. Same thing for carbs, same thing for proteins, same thing for all of it. In fact, anything that you are not sure about, if you rely on other people's opinions and other people's direction, I mean, if you have people that you can trust and, that they're not going to steer you wrong, always leave room for a margin of error, but yeah, sure, you can trust them. But ultimately, you know what? There are arguments for everything from everyone, especially with the internet. And as nice as it was that I was getting people's opinions, because listen, I was asking for it, so shame on me. But as nice as it was to get people's opinions about whether or not I should go back to Greece, it wasn't helpful. None of the information they gave me was helpful. And I remember just thinking, you know what, I'm going to let it lie for now. In the absence of a clear decision, I'm not going to make any decision. And I remember getting up one night at like 4 a.m. I needed to go to the washroom, and I got up, and as soon as I stood up and was walking to the bathroom, to the washroom, all of a sudden this thought came into my mind going, go back to Greece. Don't go to this place, go to Greece. And I thought, okay, there we go. Decision made. And it was the best decision. And I believe that was some sort of intuitive communication, intuitive urge, intuitive knowledge coming to me in the middle of the night when the mind, as it usually is for me in waking states, was dormant and, clarity could come through. I'm talking about this because we live in a world where everybody has an opinion, and a lot of people who have influence talk about things in terms like best practices or the avenues that one should pursue. And I have such an issue with this. I take such issue with just the concept of best practices. I mean, first of all, just that rubs me the wrong way. And it has rubbed me the wrong way for a long time. I used to, years ago, initially see that sort of catchphrase, that catchword, best practice. I would see it online, and I just thought, who the fuck are you to tell anybody how they should be doing something? Now, this is coming from someone who has never been, how can I phrase this? I've never felt like I was nurtured through commonly accepted avenues of, let's say, education, of employment. It was up to me. It was up to me to find my path of contentment, to find my path forward. For all intents and purposes, the educational system failed me, and it was up to me. and it has always been up to me. I create what I put out into the world. I don't rely on anybody. I don't have any, mentor or teacher or magician who's coming in and saying, "Oh, here, why don't you do this, and this is the way to do it." I make it up as I go along, and I've been doing it long enough for all different things, all different avenues of my career that, I fake it till I make it. And by and large, I've made it. And I'm very proud of that, which is why when someone comes out and says, this is the best way to do something, I take real issue with that, because there were, quote unquote, best practice ways for me to go out and do everything that I have done that failed me. It was up to me to figure out what was right for me. The way that I feel compelled to execute anything, the way I feel compelled to live my life, is the way that it must be executed and lived, my way. There are going to be people, there have been people trying to convince me that there's a better way, another way, a quote-unquote best practice way. And listen, there are going to be times when talking it over and explaining why my way needs to be the way, when I need to, there are going to be times where that's necessary, but there are also going to be moments where I need to stop having the conversation and, I'm going to do what I need to do it my way, Frank Sinatra styles. What I've learned is that you need to understand, or one needs to understand, the structure of something before one breaks away from the structure of something. So let me sort of give you an example. In my last career, I was in the retail business management. And so I would manage big box retail stores. And there were, in the one employer that I worked at forever, there was a policy and procedure book that was, God, I don't know, 500 pages, 600 pages, something like that. And there were rules. There were rules and there were regulations as to how things were done in certain situations, and to keep it legal and to keep it best practice, right? So I learned that policy and procedure manual. I learned everything in there, and it was once I knew everything that was in there that I could then break away and be an excellent manager. Because I've always found that the difference between a good manager and an excellent manager is that a good manager, and actually some really not good managers, stick to policy and procedure, even if they don't agree with what that policy and or procedure is, and they just execute. In some cases, they have to fire people. In some cases, they have to, make what I think are unethical decisions because, the policy and procedure manual tells you that this is how you have to do it. Well, I think that the difference between a, not very good or good manager from an excellent manager is that the excellent manager knows when to break the rules, and an excellent manager knows when to break the rules, and knows that they are willing to defend those choices, because sometimes policies and procedures and best practices are either archaic, or they are unfair, or they have taken the human aspect of a situation out of the equation. So once you know what the structure is of any given situation, you are able to break away from that structure, knowing what you're supposed to adhere to and knowing why you don't agree with it, and able to defend why you don't agree with it, because it is essential to be able to back up a decision that serves you and that you stand by, even if it isn't in alignment with quote-unquote best practice. Now, I was raised in the Jewish religion. And like most other religions on their high holidays, I was taught that there were things that I should do, there were things that I should not do in order to observe whatever holiday it was properly. We live within a framework of shoulds and should nots, whether it be the laws that govern our system, whether it be the commonly accepted protocols that our society accepts as being quote-unquote normal, or whether it be the confines of our religions and our cultures that tell us that there's a prescribed path towards being a good devotee. We live in a system where things are either classified as good or bad, acceptable or not acceptable. So is it any wonder then that so many of us walk around throughout the experience of life that is, by the way, unique to each and every one of us, adhering to more shoulds and should nots and wondering what I should or should not do, and incapable of making a decision? There, listen, is obviously a base moral and ethical system that each of us inherently understands and observes, that is collective to us, with the exception of some people who veer off into the fringes of what we all know to be good or bad. Most of us do not murder, right? Most of us do not intentionally inflict harm. But the self-regulator that lives in every single one of our brains is applying more should and should nots than is necessary. And we've been conditioned to believe that it's okay and normal to justify doing or not doing things, not based on how we feel about them and what we believe should be done or not done, but perhaps based on, what external sources would think or how it's been done before us. External systems of government don't necessarily give the final word as to what is acceptable or not. And it is time that each and every one of us examine how we hold ourselves back from enjoying this experience of life and achieving the highs that are available, not only available, but waiting for every single one of us. I'm done. I'm done living by rules that I find archaic or unfair or unrealistic or detrimental to my own well-being, my own path to freedom, or the way that I show up in the world. I mean, some of those policies and procedures that were in that manual in my last career were ridiculous. They were absolutely ridiculous. And that was one of the reasons why I left the career, because I thought, you know what? First of all, I'm not going to be somebody's bitch. I'm not going to be somebody's, lackey who does the grunt work for them, number one. And number two, I'm not going to enforce rules that I don't agree with. And listen, there were other reasons. I had this nudge that I was supposed to do something else with my life, and that definitely wasn't it. I had this intuitive knowledge that I was supposed to help people heal, and I obviously wasn't doing that, folding, cap sleeve t-shirts. And to be honest, I didn't respect what I did. I've said it before in a previous episode. I did not respect what I did for a job, and therefore didn't respect the way I earned money and didn't attribute any respect to the money I earned. So I was irresponsible with it. But I digress. I think it's time to let go of the shoulds and the should nots and simply do what you feel is appropriate for you, to start paying attention to your intuitive urge. It is time, and intuitive knowledge, it's time to stop giving more importance and credence to our cultures and our religions and what most people find commonly acceptable. Because, as I've said before, what is commonly accepted as being good and believed to be good is only good because it's commonly accepted and believed. Right? Just because 1 billion people think something is good doesn't make it good. It just makes it commonly acceptable. It's commonly accepted. So let go of your shoulds. Let go of your should nots. Live your life in freedom. There are memes, countless memes. I can't tell you how many times on LinkedIn I've seen articles telling us what the world's top CEOs do as daily rituals. We've got books on the habits of the most highly successful people. We have everyone yapping on social media about what's right, what's wrong. Everybody's a reporter. Everybody's launching an opinion. Everybody's speaking. Nobody's listening. And actually, I took notes about what I was going to talk about for this episode of the podcast. And right after I took the notes on my phone, I opened Facebook and found a targeted ad trying to sell me a book titled High Performance Habits with sorry to the author, but some bullshit subtitle about how extraordinary people become that way. How extraordinary people become that way. Right there, there's division. Right there, there's separation. Right there are the haves and the have-nots, the extraordinary and then the ordinary, and I guess the less than ordinary. People lap this shit up. People follow. They follow what others tell them to do. And you know what? We are all extraordinary when we let our individuality shine. And you know how you do that? You pay attention to your intuition. Let go of what you should do and should not do, and do what you feel is right for you. Now, let me sort of elaborate on that. It's not just a feeling, it's a knowing. Intuition is a knowing, like that little flash of knowledge that blasted through my head when I woke up that night in the middle of the night trying to figure out whether I should go back to Greece. That was intuition. It was communication, I believe, from the soul to the brain. It was communication from my sixth sense. Your intuition, my intuition, our intuitions are constantly communicating with us. Some of us are more highly tuned to hear and to listen to it. Others not so much, because we're not encouraged to listen to it. Well, you know what? I'm encouraging you to listen to it. I want you to understand that your intuition is your guru. There. No need to read some inane book. There's no need to waste time on that LinkedIn article. There's no need to give a second thought to that meme that you saw somewhere online, somewhere, someone talked about, someone sent you, email, chain letter, whatever. Amplify what makes you you. Be yourself. There. And for God's sake, stop paying attention to what other people are doing and telling you to do. I want to make sure you heard me. Stop paying attention to what other people are doing. Stop paying attention, rather, to what they're telling you to do. You know the answers. Very often people come to me because they can't make a decision. They're in the middle of a decision. And I've actually had coaching sessions with people who have walked in and they've started the session off by saying, I just want you to know that I know that this sounds silly, but I just need you to tell me what I know I need to hear. And so they will tell me, literally, verbatim, the words that I need to tell them back, that I need to say back to them so that they can say, okay, thank you, and then walk away. Very often people will come to me and they'll be in the middle of trying to make a massive decision. And I will say to them, look, if you've never tried meditating, now's your time. This is your call to meditation. Because when you sit in silence and real silence and start to observe how the brain works and start to not pay too much attention to it and start to just tune into that, that undercurrent of silence that seems to be at the root of all sound, and you start to let the body let go of its muscular holding patterns, it's in those moments where we find answers. It's in those moments where there is a communication that occurs that is hard to explain. Some of you may think that I'm full of shit. You can think whatever you want, but this is a thing. I'm telling you it's a thing. And if there is no other reason for you to do meditation, let it be for you to find the clarity that you need and to find the answers that have been eluding you. Now, to many of you who have tried meditation before and have not been successful for whatever reason, either you thought that you were supposed to empty your mind and that didn't happen. Well, no kidding, it didn't happen. That doesn't happen until the body is dead. So, no wonder it didn't work out. But, I've spoken to many people and said, meditation is a really, really good option for those who are trying to find answers to questions, answers that have been eluding them, for people who are trying to find clarity. And, for those people who have tried it and it didn't work, I would say this is the best way to do it. I'm not going to get into a meditation now, but I would just say if you want to learn how to meditate, and by the way, it's not something where you have to, be perfect, have this erect spine and have your fingers in a specific positioning and, be in this sense of bliss. It's not that at all. It's being able to, unattach from your environment as effectively as possible, which is why I usually say to people, find a quiet space where there's not a lot of activity going on around you. Maybe close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that, and start to breathe slower, start to breathe deeper, ideally through the nose, and start to just pay attention to that breath. And every time your mind wanders away from that breathing, away from your own breathing, acknowledge that has happened, acknowledge that it's normal, there's no judgment associated to it, and then come back to the breathing, and come back to the breathing, and with every exhale, let the body relax. And it's usually in states like that, in situations like that, where all of a sudden, once we really start unplugging from everything that we're typically plugged into, and I don't mean that literally, that's when the mind all of a sudden, can settle. And when the mind settles, in my experience, that's when the most important information has started to bubble up. Your intuition is your guru. I want you to think about it. I'll see you later. This has been the Examine Life with Bram Levinson.